Hey YouTube, Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Deskbot Yugioh deck profile for December 2023. I've always been a big fan of the Deskbot playstyle, utilizing all of the different numbered Deskbots from 1 to 9, and even their Synchro monster that you can make use of, summoning out a good variety of different Deskbot monsters to then make use of the many different card effects we have, whether it be our boss monster, Deskbot 09, our pendulum monsters of Deskbot 05 to Deskbot 08, and the lower level Deskbots with all their initial setup for the monsters. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. We'll go ahead and go through all of the Deskbot numbers numerically. Starting off with Deskbot 1, we are running 2 copies of this card. It gains 500 attack and defense for each machine type monster you control. If 2 or more machine type monsters are special summoned at the same time while this card's in your graveyard, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card. So it's just an overall good tuner that you want to have in the graveyard for its special summon back power with your other Deskbots. One of the easier ways, I would say, is just with the summon power of some of your other Deskbots being able to summon out, even via pendulum summon. If you were to do so, that can be enough to summon out your Deskbot 1 onto the field from the graveyard. We run the 2 copies just so we have better search power to grab them as well. If our opponent, manages to banish one of them, we have another target to rely on in the deck to search out as well. And for the next Deskbot, we run 3 copies of Deskbot 2. If this card is special summoned, you can add 1 Deskbot card from your deck to your hand. All machine type monsters you control gain 500 attack and defense, except for this card. So while Deskbot 2 doesn't help much with its own power up, it can search out any good number of Deskbot cards, including the monsters and even our field spell, Deskbot base, just when it is special summoned. You can either go for the pendulum summon or rely on our next Deskbot to summon it out, which is Deskbot 3. When this card's normal summon, you can special summon 1 Deskbot monster from your deck, except for Deskbot 3. Once per turn during either player's turn, you can target 1 Deskbot monster you control. It gains 500 attack and defense for each Deskbot card you currently control until the end of this turn. So having that power boost of Deskbot 3 also comes in handy. If you could just summon out via normal summon, then you can summon out your Deskbot 2 and then grab any additional Deskbot card off of Deskbot 2 onto the field, just extending more and more into the plays you may want to go into. And then for the next Deskbot, we run 3 copies of Deskbot 4. If this card battles an opponent's monster during damage calculation in either player's turn, you can activate this effect once per battle. Your opponent takes no battle damage for the rest of this turn. Also, send 1 Deskbot monster from your deck to the graveyard, except for Deskbot 4. If you do, this card gains attack and defense equal to the sent monster's level times 500. And during damage calculation only, if this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can special summon 2 Deskbot monsters with levels that are different from your hand and or graveyard in defense position. So summoning out 2 different Deskbot monsters can also work to activate the Deskbot 1 play, since you summon 2 monsters at the same time, giving you that additional resource on the field thanks to Deskbot 4, which is just meant to help to summon out all the other Deskbot monsters that I mentioned, while being able to also just send off some of the higher level ones to boost its attack to get over a good majority of other monsters our opponent may have. For the next Deskbot monsters, these are the pendulum monsters. We run 3 copies of Deskbot 5. If this card is normal or special summon, you can target 1 spell or trap card on the field, destroy it. If this card gains 500 attack for each face-up Deskbot monster in your extra deck. If this card is in the pendulum zone and destroyed, you can target 1 Deskbot monster in your graveyard and special summon it. You can only use this effect of 5 once per turn, but still, this card can also be special summoned off of Deskbot 3, giving you that spell and trap destruction power by just getting you a higher level monster on the field thanks to Deskbot 3, or a high scale 10 monster that can be used with a low scale monster like our next Deskbot, Deskbot 6, to summon out the good majority of the Deskbot monsters. The pendulum scales that we have for the Deskbot monsters help us to at least be able to set up scales to be able to summon out all of the Deskbots except for Deskbot 1, which this card will summon itself from the graveyard once you pendulum summon out at least 2 Deskbot monsters at the same time. With Deskbot 6, and also remember with these pendulum scales, you cannot pendulum summon monsters except for Deskbot monsters. This card is normal or special summon. You can target 1 monster on the field and change its battle position. It gains 500 attack for each face-up Deskbot monster in your extra deck. And if this card in the pendulum zone is destroyed, you can target 1 Deskbot card in your graveyard and add that target to your hand. Having some recycle power with the cards in your graveyard, while Deskbot 5 has special summon power, you want to make use of this because some of the Deskbots you just want to be able to normal summon back. You don't want to special summon them because then otherwise you won't be able to have their additional card effects when they're summoned onto the field. For our next Deskbot monster, we're running 2 copies of Deskbot 7. This card gains 500 attack for each Deskbot card in your graveyard. Monsters your opponent control cannot target face-up Deskbots for attacks except for this one, and if it attacks a defense monster, inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent. While it's more of a powerhouse Deskbot, it doesn't really add much to the recycle power of the deck. That's why we're only running the 2 copies of this card. It can be summoned out with cards like Deskbot 3 as well, or back from the graveyard with cards like Deskbot 4. So you really just need the 2 copies of it to make use of. Same with the next one, which is Deskbot 8. Gains 500 attack for each Deskbot card in your graveyard, and your opponent cannot target face-up Deskbot cards with card effects except for this one. So you have the battle option with 7 and the card effect one with Deskbot 8, and it can make up to 2 attacks on monsters during each battle phase also, with the last of the Despots being the 1 copy of Deskbot 9. This card can also just be summoned off of Deskbot 3. That's why we just have the 1 copy of this card. You can make this card gain attack equal to the combined attack of all Deskbot monsters you currently control, except for Deskbot 9, until the end of your opponent's turn, and this has to be during main phase 1. Only this card can attack the turn this effect is activated. If this card battles, your opponent's card effects cannot be activated until the end of damage step, and if it will be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can destroy 1 Deskbot card you control instead. So this card doesn't have any restrictions with the battle damage, so if you can boost up the attack of a good majority of your Deskbot cards, your Deskbot 9 can hit some pretty incredible numbers, swing into one of your opponent's monsters, and that could be enough just to finish the game right then and there, depending on what its attack currently is. With the last of our main deck monsters being 2 copies of Gizmic Yada, the Gleaming Vanguard. You can special summon this card from your hand by attributing 1 normal summon monster. You can only use this effect once per turn, and during your main phase, if this card was normal or special summon this turn, you can immediately after this effect resolves, normal summon 1 monster. If you do, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of the turn, except for monsters of the same original type as that monster. So this is to give you more of an option to set up some of our lower level Deskbot monsters, making use of the normal summon monsters like Deskbot 3, which will give us a special summon of another Deskbot, and then we can use Gizmic Yada as the tribute for that card to then also have 2 level 5 monsters, because you can combo it with Deskbot 5 and this card, to then go for an overlay power of Cyber Dragon Nova into Cyber Dragon Infinity, also for extra deck options. Moving on now to the spells. For our spells, we're running 3 copies of the field spell Deskbot Base. All Deskbot monsters on the field gain 500 attack and defense. Once per turn, you can reveal any number of Deskbot cards in your hand and shuffle them into the deck. Then draw cards, the same number of cards, and you can banish 9 Deskbot cards with different names from your field and or graveyard, except for Deskbot Base, to shuffle all cards from your opponent's hand, field, and graveyard into the deck. So while it's a fun card effect to aim for, you're mostly using this card for the shuffle back power for more consistency for your cards, revealing any number of Deskbot cards, even some specifically that you may not want in your hand because they would be better off as just a special summon target, and then hopefully drawing into some of the more utilized ones like Deskbot 3 or 4 or proper scales to set up with your pendulum monsters. I also run the 3 copies of Urgent Schedule. If your opponent controls more monsters than you do, special summon 1 level 4 or lower and 1 level 5 or higher Earth Machine monster from your deck in defense position, but negate their effects. You cannot declare attacks the turn you activate this effect with machine monsters, except with machine monsters. And if the set card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add 1 level 10 machine monster from your deck to your hand. While you don't use the search effect much, being able to summon out the majority of our Deskbot monsters, just going with the 4 or lower and then the 5 or higher, depending on which ones we want to summon out, thanks to Urgent Schedule, it gives us more resources to make use of with some of our other monsters. You can then just have those 2 monsters summoned out, then summon out your Deskbot 3, and then have this card target the Deskbot control and gain 5 attack for each Deskbot you currently control until the end of this turn. Add boosted power to then also stack up on Deskbot 9. I also run the 3 copies of Machine Duplication, just being able to target a machine type monster you control with 500 or less attack, and special summon up to 2 monsters from your deck with the same type as that monster. So all the Deskbot monsters start off with 500 attack, meaning you can get a good majority of special summons thanks to these cards as well. Deskbot 2 being one of the best ones, because this card is not a once per turn, and all machine type monsters except this card gain the attack. So Deskbot 2 will remain for a good majority of the time the only monster with 500 attack, since a lot of your other Despots gain attack while they're on the field. And then you'll get 2 additional searches thanks to Deskbot 2 also. For some of the one-ofs for the spells, the 1 one copy of Terraforming to search out Deskbot Base, Foolish Burial to set up Deskbot 1 in the graveyard, and then also the one copy of Call by the Grave and the one copy of Triple Tactics Talent. I thought of running Harpy's Feather Duster instead of this card. It's just a preference if you want to put it in instead of this card to the deck. With the last of the main deck just being the traps, the 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. It's really only hand trap spot we have in the deck just because we are focusing on a good majority of the scale monster field setup that we do with all the other Deskbot monsters. Moving on now to the extra deck, I run the one copy of Deskbot Jet. Needing one tuner and one or more non-tuner monsters, it gains 500 attack and defense for each Deskbot card on the field. You can only use one of the following effects of Jet per turn, and only once that turn. You can target one Deskbot card you control, destroy it, and if you do, special summon one Deskbot monster from your deck. So more special summon power, making use of some of the less important Deskbots we may have on the field. Or you can target one Deskbot card you control and one face-up card on the field and destroy them. More destruction power for your opponent's cards also, making use of that other effect also. It's just a one of, though. It's one of the more difficult synchros to get out. A lot more consistent ones like Naturia Beast, which can shut down your opponent's spells when we summon this card out. Herald of the Arclight, depending on the variety of synchro plays we can go for another negate. Yugioh Guardian, with the Earth attribute being the majority for our Deskbots. Black Rose Dragon, and the one Ignister Prominence, Blazing Draco Slayer. If you can use Deskbot 7 and then your Deskbot 1, you can summon out this card, which can also use your own Pendulum Scales to shuffle back your opponent's cards. And then also the one Crystal Wing, the one Baron de Fleur, and the one Borreload Savage Dragon for the rest of the synchro monsters that we run in the deck. For the Link monsters, I run the one copy of Link Karibo, the one SP Little Knight, the one Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Chaos, and the one Apollosa, Bow of the Goddess, to finish off the Link monsters. And for the Xyz monsters, just the one copy of Cyber Dragon Nova and the one Cyber Dragon Infinity for the Xyz monsters that we can go into with the Gizmikiata and Deskbot 5 plays. And then as for some of the go-to plays in the deck, the initial setup for your Deskbots, I would say, is one of the more important plays to go into. Just normal summoning out your Deskbot 3 to give you that special summon, can then summon out your Deskbot 2 to the field, and then when this card is special summoned, you can add one Deskbot card. So you can either add cards like Deskbot Base, or even go for an initial play of grabbing one of your other Deskbot monsters to either set up a Pendulum Scale or have a good variety of different names in those cards. One of the other plays you can make use of is to summon out your Deskbot 3. Deskbot 3 will then activate, allowing you to special summon out your boss monster of the deck, which is your Deskbot 9, and then make this card gain attack equal to the combined attack of all Deskbots you currently control. So with your Deskbot 3, first you can make it gain 500 attack for each Deskbot card you currently control. So this will put your Deskbot 3 at an additional plus power of 1,000 since you control the 2 Deskbot monsters, and then being able to have this card make your Deskbot 9 gain the additional attack of all your other Deskbot monsters you currently control, the combined attack of all Deskbots. So then it'll be the only card that can attack, but it'll put your Deskbot 9 at 3,500 attack to swing into your opponent alone with this one card. One of the other setup plays, as I mentioned before, is just being able to use your Deskbot 4 for the send power. So with this card, if you were to take any battle damage, you can have this card gain that attack as well during either player's turn, once per turn. So you can send that Deskbot monster of choice to the graveyard. The higher the level, the better, because then your Deskbot 4 can hopefully get over a good majority of those cards of your opponents. And then also having a Deskbot monster in the graveyard to be able to summon back as well, which then if you just have the stall option with Deskbot 4, you can then use cards like Deskbot 3 to summon out 2, go for Link summon plays, setting up more in the graveyard for you to then be able to summon back with Deskbot 4. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. And once again, always love looking at the Deskbot deck. It's definitely a fun one to play, and I definitely do recommend it. Excuse me. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And Kira Twig out.